In today's episode of The Human Capitalist, it's going to be a conversation that you're going to want to take notes on. I am joined by none other than Rachel Bourne, who is a true force in the future state of work. Now, she's also the founder of Craft Lab Ventures, the host of The Shift Show, and a leading voice in how to rethink talent, leadership, and technology in this world of AI. We are going to unpack some of the recent headlines, including 1.1 million layoffs that have just absolutely rocked the headlines. But there's actually a twist. Rachel doesn't necessarily think that it's AI's fault. And I asked her to share her powerful tool to help you find your next career called the Checkerboard Career. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let her get into it. So I will see you in the episode. I am so excited about today's guest too. She is probably one of my favorite people, Miss Rachel Bourne. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's a privilege to be here, Trent. Thank you for the invitation. Long-time listener, first time visiting.
Yeah, I
Hopefully
know.
not the
I know.
last.
Why is that? Why are you just now on? That is a major sin that I need to confess for. I am so sorry for that.
Well, I'm like a new kid on the block, Trent.
I know.
So, it took me a while to like get comfortable doing podcasts and being on video and like put myself on the internet. Um,
Well, I
it's a
am so glad that you
journey.
are there. Well,
Oh,
and I
thank
seem
you.
to remember because we were talking in Vegas, right, in March, and you were talking about doing the podcast and all that. And I was like, you got to get on video because you have got such, like, your personality just comes out like 10 feet ahead of you, even virtually. And I think you would be remiss not letting people see that side of you because it's one of the things I love so much about you.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's one of those listen to the feedback from people like you and some of my friends, even from like college back in the day, and it's part of why I started it. So it's a privilege to
Awesome.
be here.
Well, so you were my guinea pig. What I want to do is there are two articles that really jumped out at me about AI in the workforce. And, this is a very quickly changing topic. And I know you are as much into the data as I am. So hopefully we can keep this down to 45 minutes, but I am not going to make any promises. If it's too much longer, we will cut it in half because you and I geek out on the data side. So the first one was let's see. Actually, it's so funny. I've actually started getting a lot of news from Instagram, like Wall Street Journal
I
and
thought that was
Washington
interesting. You sent
Post.
me, Instagram.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this one really kind of made me stop scrolling. So it says employers have laid off 1.1 million. Clock that, people. 1.1 million people in 2025. And we are actually approaching, let's see, COVID was over 2 million. And the last time that we even got this close was the recession of 2008 and the .com. So this to me is kind of unprecedented. Like what did you think whenever you read that article?
Well, it's so interesting. It's such a complex field, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
right? This situation, for me, it actually really started in 2024 because I think we're starting to see some like trickle down effects. You know, the McKinseys were out there pushing spans and layers. Organizations started to do even like some of the most senior level cuts. And I think that they continue to do those kinds of things. I also think, there's been so much uncertainty in the economy. Um, and maybe at some point you and I can even talk about like what's the data that we specifically do watch would be a really interesting thing to talk
Let's
about.
go ahead and
But
tackle
like,
that now.
well, so here's my like great analogy of all this. Economics and the labor market in general is like driving a car, except you have no windshield. You can only look through your rear window. You don't even have side view mirrors, right? So we're driving this car, looking out the back of it, and we're delayed 30 days at best, right? As they like roll up the data. And really it is at this point, especially because the last two BLS monthly reports were canceled because of the federal shutdown, we're at like 90 days out at this
Right.
point.
Right.
And I think it was two. It was at least this like last one. So that's a big lag in some of the data. And so economists are like relying on private sources, ADP, and I know Revelio, LinkedIn's put some interesting things out, and they don't tell a consistent story, right?
And I'm going to do
So
a plug because, ISIMS is kind of part of my job.
iCIMS,
Is
do
we
they
put out a
put out
yeah, we
data
put
too?
out a
Oh, perfect.
free monthly workforce report. So we
Mm,
take all of our data, look at what's going on in our platform, and spit it back out to kind of say this is what we're seeing from our clients.
well, that's
And
cool.
don't
I
forget,
need to add that to my list.
Indeed's hiring lab is wicked. If you're looking for data that is understandable, some great graphs, some great insights, that is another one of my go-to sources in addition to the list that Rachel's already given.
Yeah, Gad Lebanon, I read a lot of his reports. Do you read his as well from
Hmm.
the Burning Glass
Hmm.
Institute? I think he distills things really well. And he actually had a kind of a contrarian. So another short like nugget in terms of your question, but I think there's just so much clickbait around we're losing all these jobs because of AI. So yeah, and most of the smart people I know who really understand kind of the market are like,
Hmm.
really, you
Yeah,
overhired out of the pandemic. You're just riding your ship. You're moving your
yep.
investments from humans to chips and technology and some of these other things. And
Stuff
they're
that probably
using
should have already been done before. You're just
exactly
hiding under the AI thing, going the big bad evil. Let me personify the evil here. It's not me, it's AI that's driving it. You and I both know it's not AI as much as it is automating work that should have been automated 4 years ago
100%.
because the technology
Yes,
was there.
exactly. So what I like about like Gad's point of view is he has a much more like moderate view. You guys should go check him out. I don't know him like as a person. I just follow him and I think he's smart and I really like how he communicates a lot of complexity into things where people with simple minds like me can understand it.
You
Um
do not have a simple mind.
well, but what he is saying is that like GDP is running better than the headlines are saying, right? So don't read the headlines, dig into the actual data, I think. And he is thinking that he did say like the AI infrastructure boom is already contributing meaningfully to growth. There's a lot more productivity in general. And I think it was him that said that there was something like 2 percentage points. We also have like really wealthy people who drive a lot of consumer spending. So
Mhm.
one of the things I'm going to be watching for 2026 is the holiday consumer spending, right? Are we still buying all the stuff? And that's a huge, you know, driver for the American economy. I mean, they're consumers fundamentally. You and I just got back
Right.
from Paris. It was such a
Yeah.
it was such a reminder to go into like a different culture where there's not, big box stores everywhere.
Yeah. It was and all the little bistros and all this other stuff. And I just even at like 11 o'clock at night when you're walking back in these bistros and people are sitting outside and everything. And I'm thinking they like really support their local economy. And I think that's something that's lost here.
Mhm. Yep, that's so true. The other thing, yeah, I'm guessing you're really watching is job growth slowing.
Job growth is slowing, but again, I deal in data every day looking at what we put out. And it's interesting because we do a trend line. We look at three different trend lines: applications, number of openings, and hiring.
Mm,
This month, we actually saw a dip in applications. The openings continue to increase. I think this is like the third or fourth month in a row. The
that's good
openings
to
are
know.
increasing, but the hiring has dipped down to I want to say 7%, and it started in April. And so for me, I mean, you were a practitioner too. It's just kind of like, all right, so what's going on? Looks like candidates are getting burnt out. Just like I'm tired of applying. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm out of the market. Where are they going?
Mhm.
Openings are going up, but why aren't you hiring? I mean, are openings more frontline? Or are they more for this AI tech that we don't necessarily have the skill set for? Like, you know, what people don't understand about like people like me and you is that we love data, but it causes us to ask more questions. And so whenever I looked at the 1.1
So
million,
true.
and I kind of felt like I did a drive by with you. It's like, hey, go look at this article. We'll talk about it. And I knew you were going to dig into the data just like I did, right? So
It's the truth.
like, but I mean, 1.1, that's a big number, but we don't know like who all has been affected because no one really tracks that, I don't think.
Well, and you're missing though this BLS data. The other, I mean, I think also going back to that is we are going to see in probably this next so the next round, doesn't it come out on Thursday of the data?
Thursday. I think that's what you said. Yeah.
I suspect unemployment rate will have increased. You're also seeing, college students in particular have the new graduates have the highest unemployment rate they've really ever had, and it's also the first time that college grads are not doing as well as high school graduates or, people with associate's degrees. And I think this is your point to we have requisitions that are out there. We've got the jobs posted, but people aren't applying. I think there's a mismatch between
Hmm.
skills and, like the demands, right? So supply and demand is kind of off. Um, and I do think though, like economists are saying fundamentally, the payroll, which is sort of the hires that are happening, is at a break even point, right? So things are just staying kind of steady, or they have been so far. I suspect it'll probably uptick a little bit just with, a lot of those reductions that were made in the last, let's say, even like 6 months. Many of them are senior. They all get severance packages. Those don't, things like unemployment don't kick in. I don't know
Hmm.
that they're fully even counted, like in the end.
Yeah. And it's interesting on the opening side.
Hmm.
I saw, I think it was on LinkedIn. But you know how they always have like the little news, but it's always attributing to another news source. I can't remember what the news source was, but it was the whole thing of ghost positions.
I saw that
And
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And to me, it's evergreen positions is kind of what, I always called them. But I don't know that I ever added 50 new evergreen positions just to go out there and source that wasn't directly. So anyway, that's
You know,
another.
I'm on the same page as you, though. One of my friends who I love, Joss, if you may know him at Visage, he brought up the ghost applicants with me probably like 6 months ago. We were talking about it. I think fundamentally, it does not behoove a company to put a ghost job out there. It's waste. It's wasted resources, time. He had a
But
different
what about the? I want to push back on you. What about for like? Let me go back to my banking days. I need 20 tellers within a 10-mile square radius of Dallas. I post one position and start kind of hiring those out. What do you think about that?
sourcing recs. I think makes sense, right?
Okay.
Like
Okay.
so I wouldn't actually count that in a um, as a ghost job. Like, there
Makes
are
sense.
jobs at the end of the pipeline, so, that feels okay. But I think there are people actually posting fake jobs. Sometimes it's like startups who wanna show that they're growing because they're going into an investment round. He brought that up, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So I just hadn't gotten maybe that nefarious, and what are the jobs
Wow.
signaling to the market? Mhm.
I never even thought
Um
about that.
I know. I can see where there might be a large number of small startups that are
Mm,
posting jobs just to make it look like they were growing. Um,
yeah, that's mm,
mhm.
very
And there
interesting.
I know, but I don't think ghost jobs are as problematic as people feel like they are. I have never posted a ghost job, at a Fortune 150, and, you know, we would have never because it's just wasted time and resources.
Yeah, and then two, God forbid, I think both you and I have worked under the four-letter word OFCCP. Having to audit, right? That's way too much work for me. I didn't like auditing the damn roles that we were actually posting.
Yeah.
So, well, let me shift gears on you. All right, so
Sure.
we've talked about the 1.1 million. Again, from I think this one was the Wall Street Journal as well. So the title is "More Big Companies Bet They Can Grow Without Hiring," and what it does is it actually tracks the mentions on earnings call on the ROI on AI spending.
Mm.
And it's funny. Tim Sackett and I were talking about this not too long ago. There's been a lot of like this year's been the year of sizzle for AI. I'm ready for the steak.
Hmm.
What's actually going on? You invested $7 million in this AI infrastructure. What's that timeline before you start seeing the ROI? And so, two-part question for you. One, do you agree with that? And then two, do you think that that's what's actually driving the first article that we talked about? Because we kind of touched on it, we danced a little bit around it, but let's hit that one head on.
So then, and particularly around kind of that AI impact. So I do think we're going into this low hire, low fire era for a little bit, right? You also have the job hugging, right? So people just,
Mm-mm.
there's not a natural turn that's happening because of the uncertainty in the market. So I'm going to stay here in a job that is not making me super happy, but I'm employed.
Right.
Where maybe before they would have, you know, also corporate America has been handing out severance packages. Those that wanted to leave probably are waiting for a package too. I mean, it's kind of
Hmm.
another um, potential with that. And, in terms of the AI, I do think companies are are treading water, right? They're slowing hiring and backfills. And I think it's just kind of creating a much quieter churn in the labor market water. Do you agree with that?
I I do agree. But there's part of me that's looking at where the money is going. So it is
Mm,
interesting. I do think that both of us can agree. The money that used to be earmarked for human capital is now being driven toward AI automation and the infrastructure to support both. Do I agree with that? Yeah, I do. I think that makes
mhm.
a lot of sense. I guess the question I have is, at what point do you cut off
You
your nose to
stop.
spite your face?
Yeah.
You're still going to need orchestrators. You're still going to need some people in the workforce that are going to be
Mhm.
Josh Bersin. I never thought I would be quoting Josh, but Josh Bersin actually talks about the super employee and how AI is going to be able to do that. And it's one piece of research that I actually agree with him on. But are you eliminating the future super employee now to be able to pay for the thing that's going to make it a super employee? To me, it seems very cyclical.
Well, I do think so the pendulum will swing, right?
Hmm.
Back and forth. And at some point, they're going to be like, whoops, we shouldn't automated that. We're going to go back to, human delivery of this kind of process. But I do think it goes to intelligent work design. What is
Hmm.
the work that humans really want to do? Not just what could be outsourced, because there is certainly a space where I mean, you could automate a ton of things, and I'll just pick on recruiting, right? You can automate a ton of things, but do people really wanna have that automated? Do your candidates enjoy it? Do the humans really wanna do these other things when they could be engaging with a candidate, as an example, which is in many ways much more fulfilling and energizing? So I think they're really gonna have to get smart about the intelligent design, and they will continue to iterate on it because that's what this is. This is all a design problem. But I do think we have 2 kinda canaries in the coal mine, for lack of a better description on how that goes. Oh, well, 3. You're gonna look at sort of the AI adoption rates, because what I think we're at in that, like, hype cycle is we've implemented the AI, but if you build it, they might not come.
Yeah, but
And
I don't know that we've implemented though. I think we have tested and we have piloted, but going full on implementation, you and I have led some big old implementation. I don't think I haven't seen an organization that's there yet. Let me just put it that way. Maybe you have.
well, I'm full implementation, I would agree with you.
Hmm.
I think they've put in some that's probably fair. It's not the full enchilada, right? But I think
No, I'm hungry.
they're we're running into I think people aren't even adopting the pilots to the degree that the business case had
Mm,
initially planned. And so now they're going back to the drawing board and like, well, what happened? And there's a lot of reasons why. Your people are already burned out and exhausted, and now you give them new tech and new processes, and they have to learn that when, they're navigating their own personal stress, their families, political instability, like all of these things. Um, and so that adoption layer is I think, struggling, and it's gonna continue to struggle. They also treat them like tech implementations. They tell them once, and
Yeah.
there's no real, like, infant care and nurturing, and we're gonna have to move into treating AI like utilities, and it's an evergreen thing. Oh, but we cut all the learning people, or we cut all the
Right.
change people. I
Right.
mean,
Right. This is not
the
a tech
pendulum will
issue.
swing.
The adoption thing is a people issue, not a tech issue. And I think that is the message that's being lost. And
Mhm.
again, both of us have had to lead these types of things. We have the benefit of learning the hard way, going, hey, here's this shiny new tool that's going to make your life easier. And then, we check in 90 to 100 days later and it's like, oh, nobody's using it. Oh, that's because we didn't really sit down with them and work alongside them and do some of the key things, like you said, the nurturing aspect of it. So it is going to be interesting to watch.
If I can click on the other 2 canaries,
Oh,
though,
go
the
for it.
other thing I think we gotta watch, early career hiring for new graduates, because I think with that being low, I mean, today's college graduate is tomorrow's mid-level manager,
Hmm.
and they've gotta keep those kind of pipelines going and developing. So I don't think that in the longer term, I think the college hiring is gonna stabilize. I also think with immigration rates are down and international student rates are significantly down this year, that's gonna, kinda open up some opportunities in the US market, which will be kind of interesting. And then the other thing I think we've gotta watch is long-term unemployment trend, right? So, that was the one figure that just recently came out. I don't know that I saw it in your article that you sent me.
Yeah, I don't remember that being in there.
The
What was it?
it so, long-term unemployment is classified for, I think it's 27 weeks or more if you've been unemployed. And typically in like a healthy economy, I would say it runs like 18 to 20% of the total unemployed numbers are the long-term unemployed. Um, typically, so if you go back and you rewind in history and you go to look at the Great Recession, um, when we officially kind of declared like that we were in recession, we went over 25% of the total unemployed were long-term unemployed.
Wow. Okay.
And we just recently surpassed that. And then when they went back and they looked at the, figures, when we surpassed 25%, we had actually in the Great Recession had already been in recession for our 12 months and we didn't know it. Because again, we're looking in the rearview mirror, right, with all this delayed data. So that's what I'm a little worried about, like watching, because I will say there could be a little noise in that, just because there were so many. That's why I started even the story in 2024 with the spans and layers work that were all
Hmm.
happening.
Well, you
Is
had the tech bleed off in 2024.
you're the yeah, tech bleed
Hmm.
off. Everybody's sort of like restructuring, right sizing their organizations. And those are some of the more senior level, tech was like definitely like an industry that tends to hire within itself,
Right.
right? So you end up with, uh, very senior, highly paid people who are looking for jobs, and it takes them longer to do that. So there could be noise in that 25%, but it's high. And I think
Hmm.
we have to keep watching it. And then what happens is it like spikes really fast. And I'm worried.
That's interesting. Now,
Mm.
well, I'm going to text you at 11 o'clock tonight whenever I'm running through all the data because and now you got me looking at long-term unemployment. What does that
Welcome
mean?
to my data
I
rabbit hole.
know. I know. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
Miss Rachel. But, I do think this is a fantastic segue because, we've talked about the implications, whether it's truly 1.1 million jobs or not, data remains murky. Um, and especially those that are facing long-term unemployment. I do want to bring our conversation from Paris, and we sound so bougie, don't we? We were having champagne in
it's not as
Paris
fancy as it
after. It
sounds.
really was, but I mean, it was me, you, Kyle Lagunas, and his team, and
Mm.
Lydia, like just
Mhm.
some amazing people, and all of us bring, I think, a different point of view. But I want to get to a question that you asked me, and it's very rare that I'm speechless. And I think I even told you this. Like, it's rare that I'm caught speechless, but you caught me because you're asking me how my new job is doing, because I've been doing it since June, and I told you I loved it and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
was telling you everything that I loved about it. And then you go, so what's next for you? And I just kind of paused, like I never thought about that. And then you introduce, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, so I want you to clarify, but you call it is it the chessboard
Well, or Chester
strategy?
checkerboard. Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
So unpack that for me and for the audience, because I do think if someone's listening to this and they've been out of work, um, I got into HR doing a pivot. And
Me too.
when
Yeah.
you and I were started talking about this theory, this practice that you do, I was like, oh my God, I wish I did it, but I did it the
Mm-hmm.
long way and kind of fell into it. So explain what the strategy is.
Well, and you did it. You just may not have done it in the same, like, intentional structure. Um, so, and actually, I'm going to bring up your newsletter 2 weeks ago. You were talking about OpenAI
Yes.
and their what do we call it? A job board
Yeah, it's a job platform
marketplace.
and
Yeah.
certification. And let's also give OpenAI some props. They're the only organization, including the US government, that I have seen that is actually addressing the problem and making a commitment that by 2030, I think it is, 10 million people will have been certified. They see a problem and they're trying to solve it. So kudos to you, OpenAI.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely doing some really interesting things over there. But with that is there's going to be, and you've seen it, there's in corporate America, they've been talking about skills for like 10 years. Um, I do think there's with this work design, and now you have basically like SEO, but for humans with AI, right?
I like
I don't, I
that.
don't, I don't know what else to
You
talk
need
about.
to trademark that. That's really, I like that.
Well, it there's these new sort of skills or tool sets that are going to allow us to move from job titles, degrees to actually, I think, much more skill-based hiring than, probably more aligned with a vision that, a lot of talent teams have been driving towards in the future.
Yes.
And
Because when
so
you
if
said
you
that, I
think,
just in the back of my head, I was like, finally. Every time I get asked by media or something like, what do you think it's skill based hiring? My real answer I want to go is, what the hell have we been doing for the last 20 something years? Like, shouldn't we have always been hiring for skills? Right. Like, and so like my grandmother
well,
says, what I don't say, my face comes with subtitles. So a lot of times I have to like really control my face if I'm on
I love
camera
that. I
because I'm
love
just,
that. Well, it's true though. I mean, it's a really fundamental question. What the hell have you been hiring for if it wasn't for
exactly.
skills, right? I but I what I think this is going to do is it's going to cut out some more of the noise, and it's going to be like in the same way AI can give you insights instead of just the data. It can give you the insights on a candidate, not just the data, right, which is the resume. So and I was thinking about this after kind of our conversation. And I'll tell you a story, Trent. So how I got in, like I was framed with this checkerboard career idea was, I was in the middle of grad school and I got two master's degrees, one at Thunderbird and one at Case Western, both, really solid business schools. And to graduate, you always have to go through some sort of career development. I think I was the only person that like showed up at business school that wasn't looking for more money or a promotion. I was just there to learn. And so I remember being really surprised about this because I had no undergrad business like education really and didn't quite know what I was getting into. And that summer I came to Cummins and was just kind of generally really involved. I was an intern there. And they do a lot of intern development workshops, and there was he was probably my age at this point, but I remember him being an older engineer, and he did just this, like, career pathing workshop, and he pulled out this deck, um, and walked us through this, like, really old school PowerPoint with a checkerboard on it, and he showed little pieces hopping around, and I remember sitting there going, "That is a really interesting approach to how you should think about your career." And I hadn't seen it in either one of my business schools, they weren't really kind of talking about it from a skills and strategy standpoint. And so I asked him to send me the PowerPoint. I still have the original one. I've over the literally the last like 15 years, I have sent it to a bazillion interns, proteges, and I don't remember his name, Trent. Like, I don't have the guy's
You can't
name.
even attribute it to him?
Yes, and he has impacted, this is such an interest because he's impacted literally possibly thousands of people just through giving me this PowerPoint. And now I get to come talk to you about it on the career, on the human capitalist. But if you imagine a checkerboard, right? And actually, I brought my iPad so I can show you, or maybe I should send you some B-roll. Um,
Yeah, I can pull
okay,
some
so
B-roll in.
here's my checkerboard, right?
Gotcha.
And I'll have to see if I can do it on my camera. And if you think about, you've got verticals, right? And that's like the really traditional, I'm going to go be, a marketing specialist. And then I'm going to be a marketing manager. And then I'm going to be a
Kind of the
comms
traditional
manager.
view of
Yeah,
of things.
very traditional. And then you can sort of, think about like the horizontals, right? Which are those, the horizontals being like the adjacent things, right? So you could go and be that marketing manager, but then maybe you go into sales, or then maybe you go into graphic design. Like there's so many things that you can kind of think of in terms of those horizontals. The career checkerboard, and I probably should just do a YouTube on this and
Totally.
just like
I don't know why you
explain.
haven't done it so far.
But I'm still
It's not
getting
like you
probably
don't live with a
comfortable.
video editor, ma'am.
It's true, right?
Lucky, lucky, lucky you.
I know, it is. I know he's great. Um, but I the intention is to think about, you're starting in the bottom left of this checkerboard. Okay. You can go up and you can get advancement. You can go to the side and you can move into all these sort of adjacent potentials. But what you really need to think about is, in each of those boxes, what are the skills you're going to get? What are the, like, almost like, I don't know if it's going to be like reputational, the relationships you're going to build, right?
Relationships is something that's so overlooked, you know?
It absolutely is. What is the exposure you're going to get? Because there are jobs you can get just because you have experience reporting to the C-suite or the board, right? Like, there's a lot of those things. So what you really want to think about is not the job titles, but the meat inside each of those boxes. And then in your sort of career planning and strategy, what tends to happen is, if you think about it like a road trip, you can do this in two ways. We can all get in our car, right? And the human capitalist car, and we're driving, and you're driving down I-65, and I'm just like, Trent, hang a left. And you hang a left. And we drive some more, and you're like, I feel like a right now. And we're gonna do that. Oh, someone else just called me and said we should hang a left now. And so we take this kind of meandering path. That is really how most people navigate their careers, right? They get tapped on a shoulder and they go take a job, or a recruiter just happens to call them and says, hey, I've got a job that might be really interesting to you. And, oh, it is interesting, but does it fit kind of that long-term plan? The other thing you can do is you can plan the road trip. And so, using the checkerboard kind of framework, what I want people to think about is what's on that back row, right?
Your
So if you're
ultimate
still,
goal.
yeah. And what are the like back row, like when you retire, what are the jobs that would be interesting to you as the last job before you retire? And you can set that time horizon to be in the next 10 years, or like, you don't have to think that big, but um, you know, I want to be a CTO, I want to be a CPO, I want to be a CFO, right? You can kind of put those things there. And it might just be, I just want to be the head of, talent, or I want to
I mean,
be,
an entrepreneur. I want to open up my own business.
exactly. Yeah, all of
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So, what are the skills that are going to get you, like, what are the skills in those back boxes? And your goal in playing kind of the checkerboard career game is to take roles that give you the skills that are in the broadest number of boxes, so that you basically keep that back row as wide and as open as you can be, right? Now, there are people who they're like, "Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate that broad strategy approach. I'm just gonna be an engineer 1, an engineer 2, an engineer 3," and they
And
just
that's
wanna go
okay
deep, and
if
that's
that's what you want to do.
totally cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In many ways, it creates risk, right? And, if you're kind of focusing on some of those things. I think that's gonna be really interesting because as we move into this, like, new future of work and how things are so dynamic, and or the VUCA world as they also call it, a lot of that agility, adaptability, quick learning, like, how do you sort of navigate those things and having those kind of you gotta have a good helping you have a good picture of what happens in your career, I think is gonna be very important from that kind of checkerboard, you know, lens, and keeping your options open because you never know, that role may not exist in 10 years. I mean, they're still saying, like, I'm gonna misquote the stat, but it's like half of jobs in 2030 don't even exist today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
I
think that was the World Economic Forum. And
Mhm.
but to counteract that, there's also 92 million new jobs that we don't even have a line of sight on. They're going to be created. They're going to require a smorgasbord of skill sets because I read something the other day that said that IQ used to drive the organizational structure, promotion, departmental growth. Now with AI kind of taking on that IQ, now, like there's a big question of what's actually going to drive that. I think it's going to be orchestration, like skill sets, orchestration, agility, critical thinking. Communication is going to become a huge thing, because we used to be able to hide behind our processes. Now you're actually going to have to communicate. So for those of us that are introverts, it's going to be like, it's, I'm bracing myself for it. But I do think that I love your approach of keeping that back row as wide open as possible. And you and I were talking about this in Paris. I tell everybody now, I said, I have a unicorn job. I don't know anyone that does or has the scope
No,
that
it's so
I
great. Yeah.
have, but it does, like if I had to put a period on a very schizophrenic sentence of experience, this would be it. It's leveraging my love for data,
Mhm.
interdepartmental. I've worked and supported in a like a CHRO like role, so I've got the practitioner standpoint. Like there's so many different things that this job just opens up, but I don't think that I would have had that had I not had that schizophrenic going all over the place.
Yeah.
Where,
You know what?
where Go ahead.
It feels schizophrenic to you, though,
But
like,
no, no,
when
no.
we
Whenever
talk
I
about
tell
it
the
though?
story, there is a story that threads through all of it. I've always
Good.
been about data, always
Yeah.
been about relationship management, and I've always been about what's the end goal, and I can look at something and back into it, and
So
know the
those
people
are
that
the
I need to bring in.
core those are the
That's me.
core skill and there's strategic thinking in there, like,
Uh-huh.
there's so many things that I hear right now that are the core skill sets. You could take that and apply it to like a chief product officer. You could go I mean, there's so many ways that you could go be a founder of another company. That's just and by the way, iCIMS, this is not a
She's not promoting.
pitch for Trent to
No,
leave because
no, no, no.
I agree it is a perfect job for him. But I mean, there's just so many ways you could do it. So I think if you have the sort of like intentionality
Mhm.
around the skills and what are the skills that you're acquiring um, actually, I had a podcast guest that really taught me also about unlearning, and I know
Yes,
I had the same
that's a
reaction.
whole that's a whole nother episode you and I could unpack.
We should do that.
Totally.
What are we unlearning, right? But there's keeping that intentionality, you will get further, you will be more fulfilled, you'll be able to navigate, all of this ambiguity in the matrix better because you have a vision, you know what you're doing. And then I think if you couple it with like intentional annual planning and reflection. I had a boss once every year. She sat down without fail and she captured her wins. And this was just her own personal practice.
I thought I was the only neurotic one that did that.
I really still admire that. You know, I'm not I haven't been as reflective as I want to be, but I'm going to. I have the
That's your
intention to
strategic
do it.
plan.
I know. But if companies do it, why should you not? Right?
Right.
Like everyone makes
Absolutely.
an annual operating plan at work. And I mean, my big question is why are we not doing it for ourselves?
Hmm.
And look at those skill sets, refresh them, and I sat down when I was launching my podcast because it's very skills for the future of work, you know, related and did all the research at the time. I'm going to do another refresh, but there were 19 skills across all of the future of work studies that existed. And, they're the majority of them are the human relationship influencing. How do you manage yourself? How do you manage others? It is not about what you know.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And that's
that
going to be, to me, when people start talking about what's the major workforce shift, that to me is it.
mhm.
You used to have to be the smartest person in the room in order to have that top chair. And now that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you and I both have worked for very smart people that we would never go work for again, right? I can name a couple.
Maybe. I've
Um,
been lucky. I've actually been very lucky, I will say that.
I've
But
been blessed more by people that, and I use the term imprint because it's like, um, there's a sidewalk that we take the dogs down, and it's got two handprints in it. You
hmm,
know, how many people have seen those handprint? Like they're there forever, and so there are people in life that I think that leave that type of imprint that is,
hmm,
it just affects you. You know, like years later. The senior lender that trained me back in 1997, I can still, Hosea Butler, I can still hear him say,
mhm,
"Never, ever, ever talk more about your competition than you do about what you can provide your client." He
mhm,
goes, "Putting them down is not going to make you look better, but
no.
let them put themselves down by doing like it just little things like that." So whenever I think about your checkerboard, if I flash back to 1997, I was putting
Mhm,
myself through school working as a banker. I had this dream of being, what, I don't even remember what it was at the time because I've changed my mind so often. But if someone's sitting and they're going, "Hey, Rachel's really onto something. I need to make a pivot because I'm seeing that my job has been laid off at several different
mm,
companies." Where do they start? Like, give them the next 5 steps that they need to do to create their checkerboard.
mm. So I think for me, step number one is going to be like, you need to do some real reflection, but you need to do some listening. Like, talk to your friends. Like, why do you love me? Get a good perspective about who you are, how you show up, maybe some areas that you need to improve. That'll be hard for people who care about you to tell, but just ask them for their advice. What is your advice for me? Or ask them, what's the one thing I could do? Ask your direct reports. What's the one thing I could do to make your life easier? Things like that.
But you can actually go through, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but like with your direct reports
Mhm.
and even your teammates, you can make it fun. And I'm thinking of whenever I left the bank, they did a roast of me,
Oh,
and it was
that's
hilarious
really
because,
funny.
oh yeah, like they even made a little pill bottle. It has all the warning things, and it had all the warning labels, and they clocked me, and I could do nothing but
That's
laugh
hilarious.
because I knew my weaknesses. But I
Yeah.
brought that team together because there were certain ones that loved details. They
Mhm.
love details, special operations. I don't care about that. I'm looking at where we're going, but I needed someone that was really passionate about that. So I
Absolutely.
would I would encourage you, to your friends, to your family, to what is the one thing that I do that drives you crazy the most? And that way it's kind of fun, but you're getting that data in a less, they're going to be a little bit more open with you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So, like, there's this, like, who you are and how you need to develop. The second piece, I think, is you've gotta do almost like an inventory of your work. What gives me energy and, like, what just sucks me dry? When do I just
Mhm.
feel like what gets me frustrated? Like, those sorts of things, because it tells you the kind of work you wanna do, right? Like, I'm the same way as you, Trent. I like data, but I don't like to get bogged down in details, and if someone comes to me with lots of nitpicky details, I just I get almost overwhelmed. I'm just like, just figure it out.
Right.
You
Well,
decide.
yeah, I always tell people if I'm flying from Atlanta to New York, do not take me through Raleigh, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Dallas. I want a direct flight. And
Great
if I have
analogy.
questions, I'll ask, you know.
Mhm.
So I'm glad to know that's another reason why we get along so well.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, you and I, met the first time, and I think we totally clicked for sure.
Totally, totally.
So if you know now a little bit about, like, the kind of work that gives you joy, right? Which can get you to that back row, and also sort of your feedback and how you need to develop and where you may need to grow. I think you gotta start building your back row first, and I love to do that with really going and calling the people that actually do the jobs themselves. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people, where I've just been like, I've called them and been like, "Hey, I'm just really interested in what you're doing. 20 minutes, it'll be worth your time." And I show up, I ask 3 smart questions. I might be able to help them, I might not, but you know what? Sometimes 6 months later, they were telling me about a problem they were trying to solve, and I found the answer, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you never know where those sorts of things are, but you gotta talk to the people who are doing the work, if it exists today, right? And, be get a good understanding of what they love and what they don't, right?
Mhm.
That'll inform you a little bit, but you gotta build the back row first. And then for me, I think it's very intentional about taking that, skills framework that you have and lay out what are all the potential jobs you could have that would get you to this one job. So, say I wanna go into being a CTO one day, right? Do I need to go learn how to lead IT teams? Do I need to learn how to code? Should I go do a tour in, like, cyber? And if you think about, like, even some of these, like, rotational development programs that companies have, you can make your own. You can do it with side gigs, you can do it by I
Well,
mean,
that's great advice.
I got into
Side gigs,
recruiting.
that's a fantastic call out.
Yeah. I got it into recruiting just by going to career fairs, uh, eventually, and I had no idea that, the people actually who invited me to the career fairs actually ended up working for me when I went into talent acquisition, and
Super.
they were great. So I had already seen how they worked. I knew, how they were felt very comfortable with, like, teaching me how to map requisitions and, do my I had my own, like, searches in recruiting because I wanted to learn all of the things, right? Um, so, uh, start by then dipping your toes in the water, and that will usually open the doors for you because once you can tell really relevant stories in a job interview, people totally click with that.
Yes, I love that. So
Mhm,
start with an inventory, doing some reflection, then take
mhm.
one standard deviation. Ask your coworkers, ask who reports to you, ask your friends and family,
Yeah,
what are the gaps, what are the things that do really well. Also, too, you did touch on finding out what about a job, regardless of the title or whatever, what gives you joy. I am going to do a little plug for Plum. They do a fantastic, and it's a free assessment that what drives you and
I
what
love
drains
Plum,
you.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great place to start, and it is scientifically backed behavioral psychology.
Mhm,
So, and I read mine, and I felt like I was being read. It was very, very accurate. And then once you help all of those, start with your back row and start with
mhm,
maybe interviewing. And I do think one of the questions that you should include in your interview for that back row, that ultimate role that you want, not just what are they doing, what do they like about it, what do they not like about it, where do they see it going in X number of years that lines up with
great
your
question.
target?
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
they're going to have the insight and it may affect that middle strategy.
Yeah, and those are, like, opening doors of future hiring managers at some point too,
Hmm.
right? I mean, if they know that you're curious and you're interested, I think that can, really get you in there, and hey, I mean, it might even be years down the road.
Hmm.
Remember when we met
Yeah.
and, you know, I
Believe it
mean
or not, there's a hilarious, poignant story. I was in banking, was working on I was managing a region for some retail division. And there was something, we had family banking. So anytime there was an employee that had a banking issue, you called this special department. This guy gets the phone, helps me out, goes the extra mile, like goes and does a couple of things that really he wasn't supposed to, not say he wasn't supposed to do. He didn't have to do it, but he did it. And he called and let me know. And I remember asking him, I was like, so Matt, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to do in banking? He goes, it's kind of funny you asked. I just went on this interview with Don Ballou for their rotational program. I said, you interviewed with him yesterday? He goes, yeah. I mean, if you know him, if you can put it, well, I reported to Don Ballou. And whenever they came out of all their training, they came with me. All of the
So you knew
management
all of
trainees.
the.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't interview them. I wasn't part
Mhm.
of the interview process, but I was part of the training process. So fast forward to, a year later, he's showing up at one of my branches and we became like best friends. And he actually married my husband and me in 2023. So I mean,
Love
we've been
that.
friends for as long as my daughter has been alive. So,
Aw.
it's not just where that might lead you professionally. There's also, and you and I both know this, there's so many connections that we have in the industry that our paths have crossed at one point and we just became
Yes.
connected. And you are definitely one of those that I can always count on. And if I needed a data backed, very introspective viewpoint of a decision, you would definitely be on the top five
Mm,
list of people that I
that's
would
so
call.
sweet. Well,
And you
I want
need
to
that.
give one shout out to iSIMS because I think you guys, I haven't seen this in the market, but you have job specific, like function specific job boards. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Mm. You're like, yes, Rachel, I know
Mhm.
it all. But I actually think from a technology standpoint, that's really unique. And it's actually, I send people to them a lot just because I'm like, if you want to know really what's out there functionally, this is a really good kind of market scan that exists. And I actually also think the future of work is going to be technology providers who are going to make it easier for candidates to find the right jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe we're all still using OpenAI to, you know, do job hunts and some of those things, but, I think it's that kind of stuff that's gonna really help candidates too.
Well, and we got to change the experience. The experience is still, we just went from filling out an application and faxing it to now we just do a web version of it and we haven't upgraded in the last 20 years. I think it's time for us to upgrade. And so I'll have to tell you offline, some of the stuff that we're
Yeah,
working on. I think you're going to like
we
it.
haven't gotten to unpack some of that stuff,
Yeah, we're
but,
going to have to unpack some of that.
yeah,
Well, Rachel, thank you for coming on and being my guinea pig.
such a pleasure.
I knew you would always bring the heat. So where you do have a podcast. So what's the podcast and where can people find it?
It is the Shift Show with Rachel Bourne. They can find me on the Work to Find Network or the shiftshow.net.
Okay.
And, you know, I definitely encourage people to watch it. I'm launching a mini series tomorrow
Oh,
on executive search and the unwritten rules. Like it has a strong executive search component just because there are a lot of people that are looking right now. But
uh-huh.
like they're with the same way that AI is democratizing knowledge, I'm trying to democratize these like unwritten rules of the workplace.
I
And
love that.
I know executive search is such a big one. So that's the first episode that's coming out. And there's going to be several others kind of around that. But just really helping people like navigate all of this chaos with some clarity. So
Love that.
yeah.
And I did not say the name of your thing because I do have a stutter, and I knew that if I tried to say the name, I would actually say the pun that was coming off of. So
Well, people always ask me if there is a pun, and the answer is yes, because we're all
always.
navigating this show together.
Absolutely. And then, of course, people can connect with you on LinkedIn. You always put
Absolutely.
out content. Make sure whenever you go and connect with her, go to the bell and hit all. So that way you don't miss out any of the little
Oh,
jewels that she throws out there.
that's awesome. Well,
Well,
thank you
thank
very much,
you.
Trent.
All
Yeah,
right. Well, I hope you inspired everyone's Monday like you have mine. And of course, we will catch up with each other soon.
of course. Absolutely. Talk with you soon.
See ya.